Hello, Northern Virginia. This is Nova Weekend Warriors, focused on those runners, cyclists, athletes, outdoor enthusiasts, and fans of fitness in the Northern Virginia area. I'm Meg Donnelly, a licensed massage therapist in Herndon, Virginia, focused on those weekend warriors. As with every episode of Nova Weekend Warriors, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as advice, medical or otherwise. The views of guests in each episode are solely their own and not necessarily the views of the Nova Weekend Warriors podcast or of Meg Donnelly in her capacity as a licensed massage therapist. So I am super excited today because we have someone who is just a wonderful advocate for cycling in the, not only just the Reston area, but in Northern Virginia as well. And so I would like to welcome Ann Mater.
Hi.
Hi, Ann. And Ann, you're the owner of the Bike Lane, which has two locations, one in Reston and one in Springfield.
Yep.
So before we get started, just can you tell me really briefly a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the Bike Lane?
Sure. I actually am a native of Reston. I grew up here, went to South Lakes. Yay. And opened the Bike Lane with my husband. We started off in Burke. We have a location in Burke for 18 years ago, and then we moved our Burke location to Springfield, and then we opened up a Reston location 10 years ago, which we just relocated from Reston Town Center over to Sunset Hills, right off the WNOD. And we opened a brewery and a coffee shop. So.
Which, I am super excited, and at the end we'll talk a little bit more about the Bike Lane and specifically Reston, since that's the closest one to me. But what I'm really excited about is in the new location, right? I might have been a little upset when you left Reston Town Center, but in the new location, you're right on the WNOD is one, and two, to have the coffee and the beer. I mean, who doesn't love a good beer after their run?
It's so great. Mm-hmm. It's so great. I'm drinking more coffee than ever before, and I love our beer. So I start with coffee, go for a ride, end with beer, and it's really cool. Awesome. It's actually great. It's right on the trail, right next to a mountain bike trail. It's fabulous.
Awesome. I am on dry January right now, and that will be ending when I go to Hawaii, and when I come back, I am definitely hitting that up for sure. Yeah. So now you have not always been a cyclist, and you have not always had a passion for biking, which is something I always love to hear, because I think so many people automatically think you it's something you had that bug since you were little. And you didn't. So can you, I know you shared with me once before, but can you share with our audience a little bit about your story? And today we're specifically going to talk about mountain biking, and so how you got into that.
Right. So growing up, I played soccer, I did swim team, but I really was not a great athlete. I mean, I was never winning anything, or, I wasn't a huge athlete. So I went to college and did usual college things, and then graduated. And it wasn't until I was probably, I think I was 24, and I was living in Atlanta, and I kind of needed something to do. And so I randomly walked into some big store, big box bike shop, kind of outdoor shop, and bought a mountain bike. And I really, honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know the difference between a mountain bike, a hybrid bike, a road bike, whatever. I just wanted something with two wheels to get me outside. So I took this bike and I went to this park in Atlanta. I don't even know what park it was. We got on the bike and started riding, and it was kind of like a cinder trail, went around a lake, and it was real casual, and people were walking, and dogs, and riding their bikes and stuff. But there was this little single track that went off the trail, and it just, I don't know, it just drew me. I was like, oh, that looks cool, because nobody else is going that way. Nobody can see me what I'm doing, because I was kind of, wasn't super fit, and I was very self-conscious about everything. And so I'm like, let me just take this trail. And so I started riding on this trail, and it was I don't know. It was just this moment of like, this is so fun.
Yeah.
And I started riding up this hill, and I couldn't make it up the hill, so I got off, and I'm pushing my bike, and all of a sudden these riders, these like 4 or 5 riders, and they're all in spandex, and they're all in their gear, and they come riding up behind me. And they're like, hey, why don't you follow us? We've got this, great route or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'll be right behind you. And they start riding, and of course they took off and they were gone. And but I kept going, and I just fell in love with mountain biking at that moment. And it made me feel like I was off the beaten path. I was in the woods. I was with nature. And it was something where I didn't have anything to compete with, I don't know. It was just like this just total great experience.
Well, I always say, like, for me, like, some people like the competition of someone being like right next to you and kind of, working against them. And in certain circumstances, that's great. But like for me, I always say, like, I love to work out in my bubble.
Yeah.
And I just want to be like left alone and do my own thing and maybe have some guidance, but have the freedom to do what I feel is comfortable for me on any given day. Right. And it seems like that really gave you the opportunity to do that, especially when you're first starting out, because there's so, I think, well, maybe especially as women as well. I'm sure men go through this too, but we can create so much self-doubt in, I'm not fit enough to do this. I'm not, what does everyone is everyone looking at me? Did I, do I have my proper form? Am I this? Am I that? And if you can like get into the woods and it's a little bit darker, but a little bit like,
nobody's there watching you.
Correct.
It's so, you don't have to, and even like, and what I didn't realize about myself, that I know very well now, is that I'm a competitive person.
Yeah.
And so, so for me, if I go into the gym, the first thing I'm doing is like, if I get on a treadmill, I'm looking at the person next to me like, oh, I should be going faster, or I should be doing this, or, I don't look this way. So I'm like always, self-doubting and I'm always comparing myself. Whereas when I went and got on my bike and went into the woods, there was nobody to compare with. I was there, I was enjoying myself there. If I pushed my bike up a hill, that was fine, and as a matter of fact, when I did get into the sport, there were no women mountain bikers. So if I did go riding, it was always with the guys. Right. And so in those group rides, I was like off the back all the time. And just trying to keep up. And so there was this just kind of this. It made me very self-aware, and and it also gave me this opportunity to just do what I wanted to do. Yeah. And so let's talk about that a little bit, right? Because people may have some preconceived notions, and I just did another podcast where we talked a little bit about stereotypes, and I think that cycling has a lot of stereotypes that some are true and a lot that are not, right? But let's start first when we talk about mountain biking. Mm-hmm. So now I think things have changed a lot because of people like you and people in the industry that have really made some changes. We have probably still a long way to go. Yeah, we do. Yeah. But
now when I envision a mountain biker, I don't automatically, like the old me automatically would think about the guy with a GoPro on his helmet. Right. It was the guy. Right. It was always a guy. Yeah.
And now it's amazing. I can go start a ride at a trailhead, and there'll be more women than there are guys. And it's so cool. It's just something where I think a lot of women are getting into the sport, and especially as, I think in the 30s and 40s is when you can actually, bikes are expensive, sure. You've got to be able to afford, the right bike and all that stuff. And so in the 30s and 40s is where we see women coming into the sport. And it's a way where they're not, maybe their knees hurt because from running, or they've been injured in other ways. And so bike riding can really help with that. And so we just see more and more women getting into it. And then there's more and more women encouraging other women to get into it. And now with all these women out there, it's just like you can go on a group ride and have other women with you, and everybody's encouraging. And cheering each other on. I mean, we'll have a log in the middle of the trail and we'll all sit there and try it, go over it, and, and help each other. And I can't tell you how many rides I've been on with women where there's a obstacle that we're trying to get over, and everybody gets off their bikes and stands on the side of the obstacle and helps one woman at a time go over the obstacle.
How amazing is that?
There's no other sport to me that I know of that is so encouraging like that. And so there are a lot of stereotypes. And the other part of the stereotypical thing is that there's so many different things, so many different trails, types of trails for mountain biking. And in our area, we are super lucky because we have really, really beginner-friendly trails, and we have very, very advanced trails. Mm-hmm. And so there's room for everybody to ride, and there's so many opportunities to ride. And now there's, tons of we're getting more and more kids on mountain bikes and getting them on the trails. And so it's just we live in a great area for riding.
Absolutely. We do live in a really great area for exercise in general. I think we're very lucky. And that things are very foot friendly and bike friendly around here. Tell me though, because we were talking, you just mentioned that we have so many great trails around here. So can you tell me a little bit about a couple of the trails that, you really like in the area?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So obviously the one over by our shop in Reston. There's Lake Fairfax. Right at Michael Faraday Court, there's a back entrance into Lake Fairfax Park, or you can go in through the main entrance to Lake Fairfax. And that actually, there's a great single track trail system that goes through there. But the other great part of that trail is that it connects with the Cross County Trail.
Yes.
And the Cross County Trail goes from one end of Fairfax County to the other. A lot of it is paved, but it's connecting. It connects Lake Fairfax to Wakefield Park, to Accotink Park, and to Laurel Hill Park, all of which have mountain bike trails. And then there's Fountainhead Park is another trail that is the only trail in Fairfax County that is they have a mountain bike specific trail. And so that trail is specifically designed only for mountain biking, and it has it's a difficult trail to begin with, but it does have kind of an entry level starting loop, and then it has a moderate and then an advanced loop. And so that's a really cool trail. That's one of my favorite trails, just because you can get out there and I don't want everything to be single-use trails. I like everybody to be using the trail, but this is a kind of a cool trail because it's designed specifically for mountain bikers. So
right.
That's pretty cool. And then that's just in Fairfax County, and then beyond Fairfax County, you can go out to Frederick, Maryland. You can go down to the GW Forest, and it's just miles and miles of trail.
And I think there's so many more programs everywhere. So my sister, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and I could be wrong. It might not have been one of the first, but there had always been mountain biking classes up at Snowshoe in West Virginia. There weren't always mountain biking classes for women.
Yeah.
And come on, you're missing a whole demographic.
Yeah.
So I think my sister had done one of the first seasons, and when she told me how many people were in the class, I was blown away. So it's really an exciting time, I think.
Yeah, we have a great local club here called Mid-Atlantic Off-Road Enthusiasts. MORE is their acronym, and they have a whole women's group that rides on Tuesday nights, on Thursday nights. I lead clinics for them. And it's just a really great, every women's clinic we've ever had has sold out. And it's just fantastic. So, and then there's a ton of other women's clinics going on. I know REI has some. And so there's a bunch of things going on get you riding.
Yeah. Tell me though, now you just recently, and I think maybe you are either someone could say a glutton for punishment, or you have caught the passion for it and you're ready to do it again, but you did a stage race.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that.
So I did the Pisgah stage race last year. So when I first got into mountain biking, I actually, I would ride recreationally, but really what got me hooked was racing. And we have this great grassroots racing here. Every July, there's this race series called Wednesdays at Wakefield. And it's a Wednesday night race series, super grassroots. And it just, the community's super supportive. It's an easy race, and everybody cheers everybody on. So I started with that, and I think my first race was 18 years ago. And so it got me into racing, and from there I've done races all over kind of the East Coast, and even did some downhill racing and stuff. But my latest thing has gotten into, I feel like as I get older, I want to do more endurance racing, and I like endurance